With the looming threat of climate change and the ongoing pandemic, coupled with increasing conflicts around the world, the crop yields have probably taken the biggest L, after humans, of course. But thankfully, some studies have shown promising results that could end our food shortage and supply chain woes. In today's video, we will talk about one such study that could be a game changer in the farming sector if adopted by the farmers in the long run. First off, farmers can now produce high yields with lesser chemical fertilizer. As surprising as it sounds, it's now possible. According to a new academic study by the Rothestad Research Center, farmers will now be able to produce high crop yields while using significantly less artificial fertilizers if they embrace environmentally sustainable practices. Turns out, techniques such as adding animal waste and compost to soils, cultivating nitrogen-fixing plants in between crops, and growing a diverse range of produce rather than sticking to the same crops can all enhance yields while maintaining and improving a farm's natural ecosystems. What's more is that adopting these methods would be able to replace a significant amount of chemical fertilizer, the price of which has soared thanks to rising fuel prices and the war in Ukraine. This is why limiting our reliance on chemical fertilizers would not only help to safeguard farmers, but also buffer the consumers against the constant economic shocks. And the cherry on top? The widespread and long-term adoption of these practices could also contribute to more equitable global fertilizer distribution. So here's what the report found. In the study, scientists analyzed up to 30 long-running experiments across specific farms in Europe and Africa to determine how natural farming methods could boost output. What they found, we think, is revolutionary, to say the least. This is for the farming nerds. Using sustainable farming strategies alone apparently doesn't boost yields when used on top of high fertilizer applications, the scale that's typically used in farming. But when combined with the addition of some nitrogen to soils, it produced the highest yields. Did you know that despite being one of the most abundant and incredibly important gases in the air that all living things need to grow, plants and animals can't directly use it? Plants mainly get their source of nitrogen from the soil, and sometimes soil can be deprived of this nitrogen, leading to low levels of yield and generally bad plant health. This is why you need to artificially introduce nitrogen to your farm soil through various methods, which, by the way, doesn't involve artificial chemical fertilizers. What you can also do is grow legumes like beans and clover, which add nitrogen to the soil, making it more fertile and beneficial for plants around it. Also, according to the study, adding animal dung was proven to increase yields more than plant-based compost or cuttings, and cultivating a variety of crops helped to decrease weeds and diseases. Several studies have also already shown that animal poo has a good impact on soil's biological properties, as well as on microorganisms and larger fauna. When compared with inorganic fertilizer applied at the same nutrient rates, dung actually has a greater impact on soil biological activity. Now, before you complain about using animal poop and how you're better off with the same old traditional chemical fertilizer galore that you learned from Grandpa, and he, of course, knows best, this study wasn't your regular dodgy experiment done by a few college students, but by a group of experienced plant ecologists at the Rothenstedt Research Center. We say that the scientists definitely know better. And guess what? Each of the experiments spanned a period of more than 9 years. The study collected data from over 25,000 harvests of 6 crops, which included maize, oat, barley, sugar beet, and potatoes. Now, you might be wondering that 9 years is a super long time and all of that, but any researcher would tell you that following experiments over a long period of time is key. Shorter durations can give unreliable results in particularly good or bad years. This is why you need to observe your subject over a longer period to gain a better understanding and more stable results. And these results have proven to be super beneficial. Think of it like this. The pandemic, combined with chemical fertilizer, is the villain, and apparently animal turd and nitrogen are the superheroes that are going to save the world's growing food crisis. Animal poo saves the world. Who would have thought? Fertilizer costs have more than tripled in certain cases. Pretty much like everything else, thanks to high fuel prices, which were already soaring as the world recovered from the economic shock of COVID-19. To make matters worse, the Ukraine-Russia conflict has added fuel to the fire, and the costs have now skyrocketed. And since Russia and Ukraine are major producers of artificial fertilizer, the conflict has also resulted in some serious supply supply shortages and increased prices. These price hikes have left the farmers reeling and have led to even higher food costs for consumers. Many countries were already battling food shortages after exhausting their stocks during the COVID-19 outbreak. To top it off, extreme weather caused by the climate crisis has brought about heat waves, droughts, and floods to key regions around the globe, inflicting even further crop loss. It's the combination of these factors that's resulted in a global food crisis, with humanitarian organizations now warning that almost 200 million people are facing severe hunger or famine-like circumstances, while hundreds of millions more are facing shortages in the developing world. The underprivileged in the developed world are also suffering as soaring food costs and widespread inflation drain household budgets. At a time like this, ecological farming practices are a breath of fresh air. They've got the potential to play a significant role in the development of future sustainable agricultural systems. There are obvious perks of these practices beyond just good yield, such as cost savings, reduced pollution, or the supply of other useful farm products. Changing some farming methods, such as the careful use of animal waste to enhance soils or the growth of cover crops, can be done relatively quickly and doesn't require expensive machines or equipment either. So now, the farmers need to step up. There's no denying that the overuse of fertilizer is a serious issue in the developed world, as farmers have become lazy, overly dependent on artificial chemicals to fertilize their crops, and not very observant of how it's affecting the yield and the natural environment and health of the farms. Poorly applied fertilizer contaminates rivers and streams, causing pollution and algal blooms that kill fish and other wildlife species. And overly applied fertilizer leads to fertilizer burn that scorches plant leaves and causes crop damage and yield losses. But despite these factors, farmers are reluctant to use new agricultural technology and methods because they've been accustomed to a certain kind of farming environment in their areas for centuries. To be fair, they're also skeptical about the new methods' long-term sustainability due to the failure of previous innovations. But what the farmers now need to understand is that the times are changing. In fact, a lot has already changed. The need of the hour is to move with changing times. Adopting newer technology and newer farming practices will not only benefit them and the consumers, but also the environment and their yield in the long run. Now in other farming-related news. First, let's talk about how Kentucky's farming sector could set record receipts. Agricultural economists have recently revealed to the state lawmakers that Kentucky agriculture seems to be on track to reach $7 billion in cash revenues in 2022, boosted by robust commodity prices that may reward farmers hit hard by quickly growing production costs. Despite all of this year's obstacles, agricultural economists' main fear is for 2023, when commodity prices may fall without corresponding declines in farmers' input costs. Farm production expenses have risen faster than prices elsewhere in the economy. Fertilizer prices, for example, have more than doubled, and farmers are in debt and have accepted the significantly higher cost with the belief that their efforts and their money will be returned later in the year. It's a massive gamble, but it may pay off. Since 2020, market prices for Kentucky's agricultural goods have surged. From corn and soybeans to chickens and hogs, everything is expensive. Hopefully, the farmers will be able to manage it this time. And now, more about the rising cost of operation that's crippling fish farming in Nigeria. Over 60% of fish farms have been forced to close their operations, while others are battling to stay afloat thanks to increased feed costs and other economic issues that the industry faces. According to stakeholders and other industry actors, the news is a blow to attempts to bridge the demand seafood deficit gap, which presently stands at around 2.5 million metric tons per year. Aside from the challenge of high feed costs, other limitations hindering the industry's growth include a shortage of farm laborers, a lack of incentives, and unfavorable government policies. And finally, France decides to lift poultry farming restrictions. The French Agricultural Ministry has announced that bird flu-related restrictions on poultry farming were to be lifted across the country, citing a halt in outbreaks following the worst ever epidemic of the extremely infectious virus, which resulted in the killing of 16 million birds. Throughout early May, the European Union's second-largest chicken producer relaxed restrictions, including keeping birds indoors but maintaining them in the worst impacted areas. The global spread of bird flu has alarmed governments and the poultry industry due to its ability to destroy flocks. talks affect prospective trade restrictions and the possibility of human transmission. And that's a wrap for this video. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more. See you in the next one.